So what role should the parent be playing in the application process? It's actually a very good question for someone to ask. Whether I'm working with undergraduate or postgraduate applicants, often the parent is involved in the process. And I don't think it's a bad thing at all. In fact, I encourage parents to be involved in the process. However, there are some do's and don'ts when it comes to this. These are some things to think about. I think it's important for the parent to understand the process, whether they are working closely with the applicant or they're just supporting them from the backstage. Either which way, if they understand the process, it's going to be much easier for them to actually support them in the right ways. So I always encourage parents to come to the first few sessions, or sometimes I'll even hold a free guidance session with the parent to walk them through the entire process, so they understand what are the strategies and tactics that we're going to be using, how are we actually working with the applicant through the process, and the parent feels much more comfortable. They know what areas they may or may not want to step in and help. Another really great way for a parent to be involved is actually often they can provide really good pieces of information. Sometimes the applicant either overestimates or underestimates themselves, or maybe the parent has noticed various traits, skills, goals about the applicant that they can share with the consultant. And that becomes invaluable sources of information to help as you're working through this entire process. This may happen at the beginning or may happen even at intermittent phases during the process. The parent may be seeing how the applicant is struggling or is feeling tense, and they can communicate that information back to the consultant so the consultant can adjust their methodology or working style to accommodate for this. Make sure that the applicant is feeling comfortable with everything that's going on. You don't want anyone to be too overwhelmed, or also on the alternative side, not to be taking things seriously enough. Neither will help. Another area that a parent can potentially help sometimes is with a lot of the administrative details. They can download brochures, they can organize campus visits, things like that, which sometimes is either difficult for an applicant to do, because booking airline tickets, etc., will be very hard for them to do, or sometimes it's just very time consuming. They can even take that to the next level and potentially even become the project manager for all this. That doesn't mean they're necessarily doing any of the tasks, they're just managing the timeline, workflow, helping the applicant to monitor what is going on. If steps are being delayed, how do we make up for it? Things like that. That's another great way the parent can be involved. So what are some don'ts? Well, some don'ts are fairly obvious. Don't overtake the application process. That's not a good signal to the applicant. It'll actually not help to build up their confidence. It may do the opposite, or they may become very lethargic as a result, and it may not encourage them to take over the process at any point. So try not to take over the process, though of course it can be very tempting when you're nervous about your child's future, so it's understandable. Another thing is when you are interacting with universities, professors, alumni, admissions offices, to make sure your child is at the forefront. What they want to see is who is the applicant and not necessarily the parent behind the applicant. Sometimes parents are too much at the forefront and the university is not getting to see enough of the applicant, which isn't good for them. That doesn't mean you shouldn't ask any questions and you shouldn't go along. It's just making sure that you're planning in advance what your goal is and where you're digging in. A great thing maybe to do on campus visits is to focus a little bit more on, for example, the finances of the university, how they're leveraging their resources, while the applicant is focusing on many of the other aspects. Overall, it's basically a very fine balance of being either over-involved or under-involved. You don't want to be not involved at all in the process because of all these great things that a parent can share. And sometimes a parent can really come in and encourage an applicant, whether it's in the beginning stages, middle stages, or even the final stages where they're just helping to review, check everything for grammatical errors, for accuracy, etc. So try not to take too much of a step back either, and it's very difficult to sometimes find that balance, but over time you will as well. You'll see how your child is reacting to your involvement and you'll be able to adjust. So it's a process, obviously, that you'll be working through. You should also ask your educational consultant to help you in defining how involved you want to be. They can be a great guide if you find that your child is potentially not reacting as appropriate in the way that you want them to. Perhaps there are pieces of advice that the educational consultant can provide in terms of your level of involvement or how you get involved. And perhaps there are things that they should be taking on as well instead of you doing it, and you play a different type of a role, maybe more of an emotionally supportive role rather than the project manager role, for example. Either which way, this is a process, and most parents will eventually work through the process and find that appropriate balance. So we wish you the best of luck as you work with your child through this process to make sure that they reach their dream university.